Hi everybody, this is August 17th, 2024, and this is my video journal, therapeutic video journal, trying to recover from the trauma of watching my government, the British Columbia government, lock up, isolate and confine my little brother Paul Kierans, who has Down syndrome, and then kill him. Burnaby General killed him by sedating him to death as he was struggling to recover from what appeared to be a stroke. So today would have been every Saturday. I had a contract with Paul's group home paid for by you, the taxpayer, by the BC New Democratic Party government. So please remember that. It's the British Columbia New Democratic Party. The premier, the acting premier, the person who's appointed himself premier, is a guy named David Eby. He was the president of the British Columbia Civil Liberties Association, and you have never seen a human being less interested in civil liberties. It's an evil government. There's an election coming up on October 19th of 2024. I understand that the British Columbia Conservatives are 5 points behind the New Democratic Party in the polls. I exhort you, I beg you, get out there and or educate yourself about this evil socialist, communistic bunch of power-hungry, authoritarian fascists who hurt my little brother, who killed my little brother. So Paul and I grew up together. We visited at will until he was 64, and then I discovered that Paul's group home administrators, it's a cult, started as a SEX cult by Jean Vanier, a retired naval officer in the Canadian Navy, and a defrocked, excommunicated French priest named Thomas Philippe. These two criminals got together and started up. I'm not overstating any of this. It's worse than what I'm describing to you. So Jean Vanier and Thomas Philippe started a cult named L'Arche, which the scheme of L'Arche was to pretend as a facade to provide group homes for the most incapable adults and hire young women passing through Canada or through other countries to work in these group homes and live there. And then Jean Vanier and Thomas Philippe preyed upon these young women. And none of this was discovered until Jean Vanier died in 2019. And L'Arche was never investigated by the police. It investigated itself for these SEX assaults and this breach of trust, every other kind of crime you could imagine. They were allowed to investigate themselves. They wrote a 900-page report which they published on January 23rd of 2023 themselves. And they said that they had looked into the matter and it wasn't going to happen anymore, and that none of the incapable adults that were placed in L'Arche's care had been affected. And there's no way of knowing that. Most of L'Arche residents are nonverbal. So there's no way at all to know whether or not they were, and now I truly believe that they were predated upon. So when my mother, when she placed Paul in L'Arche during the week, and he lived with her on weekends, and then he lived with us, myself and my two British Columbia sisters on weekends. My mother never knew this when she placed Paul in L'Arche. When I discovered that L'Arche had created a secret, fraudulent, and forged power of attorney over my brother, appointing my 81-year-old nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario as his guardian and substitute decision maker, I objected, and L'Arche terminated my visits with my little brother after 64 years of our visiting at will. And I actually had a written agreement where I could visit Paul twice a week for an hour on Thursday afternoons at the group home and for 5 hours on Saturdays at my home. That contract, which we came to an agreement on January 5th of 2022, it didn't last 1 week before L'Arche breached it. And they said that Paul couldn't have access to anybody but L'Arche workers due to a COVID-19 outbreak. As soon as I sued L'Arche, they reinstated the visits, but then ultimately suspended them when it looked like they were going to be investigated by the police for the fraudulent and forged representation agreement over my little brother. And for 588 days, Paul was locked up in the L'Arche group home in Burnaby. And then on April 15th of 2024, I got an email from the nun's lawyer saying that he had had a stroke and I could arrange a visit through the lawyer. I dropped everything. I was at the hospital within 30 minutes. And I was allowed, Paul lasted 10 days at Burnaby Hospital. And I stayed at the hospital for 10 to 12 hours a day, every day that he was there, and I was allowed a 10-minute visit. Now, you might think, oh, Kathleen, you're a troublemaker. There must be something wrong with you. No, I had I borrowed the funds, and I paid for 2 expert reports about my suitability as a visitor for my brother. I borrowed $12,500 for 2 expert reports, and I provided them to Burnaby Hospital, but they listened to the nun with her fraudulent and forged power of attorney and let her isolate my little brother. Except for, as I said, a 10-minute. So I did have 10-minute visits once a day. And during that time, I could see that Paul was recovering. Remarkably, miraculously, he was recovering. On my second visit, he sat up, he grabbed a book from my hand and started turning the pages. Then I discovered that the federal government was investigating the fraudulent and forged representation agreement on April 21st of 2024, and Paul was dead by 10 a.m. on April 23rd. So within 24 hours of my nun sister finding out that she was being investigated for the fraudulent and forged power of attorney, my brother was dead. I could see it. I could see what they were doing. They took away his ventilator, they took away his catheter, they sedated him to death. He was struggling to recover. I could see the look of helplessness in his eyes when he looked at me. He was struggling so hard to recover. His life might not have been the same, but he did not want to be sedated to death, which is what she ordered the doctor at Burnaby Hospital to do. So I'm posting these videos asking you I'm hoping ultimately that the law will be changed so that guardians will not be able to isolate and confine incapable adults from other loved ones, which they often do as a means of retaliation, which is what my evil nun sister did. She doesn't like me, I don't like her, and I don't like her for good reason. And so as a form of retaliation, she cut off my brother's access to it. I was his only surviving family member and visitor. So things couldn't get worse than this. We have an extremely corrupt, evil. I went to the British Columbia government office every single day and dropped off a letter in person, just asking for a meeting to complain about this abuse and the isolation of my brother against his will. and they never once met with me. And in 588 days, they allowed one 1-hour visit for Christmas of 2023. So they're socialists, fascists, communists. If they could do this to me, I was trained as a lawyer, trained as a psychologist. I worked at every level of government. I was a federal prosecutor. I'm disabled now, but I obtained the expert reports confirming that I was a suitable visitor for my brother. But there was nothing I could do. They wanted to show who was in control. David Eby wanted to prove who was in control. He was the boss. He's not even elected as a premier. They're very bad people. And you think, oh, Kathleen, you're retired and you're a senior and your brother was so sick and, it couldn't happen to me. I guarantee you it could happen to you. I guarantee you, I've seen these people. They had 588 chances to do the right thing and they didn't. So get out there. The most likely party to overturn this evil socialist commie New Democratic Party is the BC Conservatives, it appears at this point. So get out there, make sure you vote, register to vote, bring 10 friends with you, get out there, become a scrutineer for the BC Conservatives. That's what I do. When I want to advocate for a party, I act as a scrutineer. So you go to the polling booth and then you make sure that they count all the votes accurately. Because I'll tell you, these people are criminals. And they will do anything to win and hold on to power. Paul, I miss you so much. I'm doing everything I can to try and stay positive. I want to make the world a better place for you and get you some measure of justice. Thank you, everybody, for all your love and support. I really appreciate it. I can feel it. Take care.